Welcome to the Lost Interviews with Ray Shaw Show.
How you doing?
I'm doing fine. How about yourself? Good morning.
Good morning to you.
You must be a morning person, huh?
Yeah, I get up early.
I work through the night. You know, my best writing is like in the middle of the night, so most of my interviews are like in the afternoons. But you and I did Kim Simmons from Savoy Brown yesterday at 9 o'clock, so it's unusual for me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I used to stay up till 4 or 5 in the morning, but now I get up about 5 in the morning.
I guess it's different too. You know, a lot of people's habits change. You know, as you get.
I started doing it when we moved to Florida because it's so hot in the summer that you want to get out and do things in the morning. You know, when it's cool. That's where I got the habit.
Yeah, I live in Bradenton, and my whole building here, it's, you know, a lot of snowbirds. They're you know, Brits and from Scotland, you know, and these guys are up. They're up like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, you know, going for their walks, you know, walking their dogs and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's fun to see the dawn, and it was fun to see it when you were up all night too. But
Yeah.
it's a good life this way.
It's two different worlds, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I wasn't aware you lived in Orlando.
Well, we've been here for over 20 years.
Really? Huh?
Yep.
How do you like it?
Love it.
Now, are you a Disney person? Do you get out to Disney much, or?
Well, when we first moved here, I was. We had annual passes, and we'd go over and kind of treat it like a country club. But and then I got so busy, we never used the passes anymore, so we quit doing that. And I really haven't been there in a long time now.
Well, it's so close to home too. You know, I guess if you have family visiting or anything like that, it'd be cool. You know.
Yeah, it is, and we have friends who work there, so you know, sometimes they get us in.
Oh wow, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, but let's see, what was I going to say about? Well, we when we first moved to this location where we are, I was a scanner radio buff, you know, like radio scanners.
Oh really?
And,
Huh.
I used to want to listen to the backstage chatter from Disney, so I drew a 5-mile circle around Epcot Center and said I want to live in this area. And fortunately, we found a nice house in the area. So, but I used to listen to them on the radio. But they've switched over to Nextel now. It's all digital. You can't get them anymore.
Right. Yeah, I was actually a DJ back in Top 40. I was a Top 40 DJ back in the late 70s and early 80s. And I went through all my, you know, FCC licenses back then, first, second, third class FCC license, and they made you do that back in the day. Now they don't care.
No, now they don't care. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, on ham radio, you used to have to really know a lot of stuff. Now you just take a simple test and you can get yourself on the airwaves.
Exactly. Do you still need to get like a third class FCC license for ham radio?
No, I never really did that. I was, you know, was like on the edge of it. I studied Morse code for a while, and
right.
I just, you know, I didn't didn't follow through with it. So, but then, you know, cell phones came out, so who needs the ham radio? Like, now I can talk on my smartphone. You know, I can talk to anybody in the world over Google Voice. So it's like ham radio is kind of obsolete to me.
I know technology's come a long way. My dad owned retail electronics stores since the early '60s, and as a matter of fact, I wrote a book about my experiences in the family business. It was in Washington D.C. on F Street, about a block and a half from the White House, and we had everything, man, from the first reel-to-reel tape recorders. I don't know if you remember the Craig 212 tape recorder.
Oh, yeah. Well, we had it back in the 50s. My dad bought a Pentatron. It was like a reel-to-reel, you know, 7.5 IPS two-track.
And the quality, was, you just can't match some of that quality from back then, nothing like a reel-to-reel,
No, the old tape was pretty good, yeah. 7.5 IPS wasn't bad.
It was pretty good, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're really excited that you're coming to Clearwater to the Capitol Theater on March 17th.
Me too. That's a lot of fun.
And
I love the old theaters. I'm glad they're still going. The people are fixing them up and keeping them alive.
That history has theater has a lot of history too. It's been around forever.
I always think that when I go to an old theater, I go, wow, I'll bet George Byrds was out on this stage at some point. point, you know.
Exactly. All the vaudeville.
All the vaudeville acts from the 20s and 30s were probably on the stage.
Yeah, they gave me a tour because I cover all the events around here, and somebody actually got. I'll tell you this. Don't freak out. Somebody actually got murdered on the balcony of that theater.
So people think it's haunted then?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh well. Have to watch out for that.
Yeah, so if you get anything unusual, during your performance, that's where it's coming from.
Okay. Keep that in mind.
Your set list, I've been doing a little peeking around, nowadays you can kind of figure out, set list on around the internet. Is your set list going to be, I guess, comparable to some of your most recent? I was looking at Argentina, when you were in Argentina.
Yeah, well, that was, we changed that set list because of the language barrier, because, I do everything in English, so I had to keep it kind of simple. I'm not sure what we're going to do. I have some variable modules that I can put into a concert, and so we never know. We kind of figure out the set before the day of the concert around 2 o'clock.
Right.
We have lunch and we check it out and see what we've done in the area, what people are probably going to like in that area, and but it's always similar in that I tell stories, usually autobiographical stories, and tie all the songs together with the stories.
Yeah, your set list was the ones I saw on the internet were very, very long. I mean, it's action packed. You had just about everything on that set list. So
I do a long show now because I decided that it's more fun to do like an evening with and have an opening act. So
right.
I'm doing like 2 separate sets.
What?
And
yeah.
We got out of that for a while. I remember back in I think it was in the 80s, Donovan came over to the house, and he was telling us that he didn't do 2 shows anymore. And I said, "Oh, how do you get away with that?" He said, "Well, I just tell them I won't, and they pay me the same amount." And I said, "Wow, I'm going to try that." So I did, and it was working for a while. But people want a longer show. That's the problem with that.
I think it's a good idea. I covered Peter Frampton. He just had his Frampton's Come Alive anniversary, and that was like a 4.5-hour show. Yeah.
Trying to get up there with Springsteen, right?
Exactly. Or remember the Grateful Dead, man? They never got off the stage.
Yeah, but they kept it kind of low key. I mean, they didn't wear themselves out.
True. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, my set is pretty intense. I do a lot of work up there.
You do a lot of work, man. I got to tell you, 8 Miles High on the acoustic. I play a little guitar, and that's got to be tough.
Well, you get used to it after a while. But yeah, it was interesting when I came up with that arrangement of it, because I didn't have the band, so I had to put in some more licks to make it kind of fill out.
It's hard. It's hard to make it sound like it does on electric, and with the the psychedelics and everything. And
yeah, you're not going to get exactly the same sound as the Rickenbacker electric, but
right.
But I kind of fill it out with some Segovia and classical Spanish licks and stuff.
Oh, I think it's awesome. It's almost like you're up there playing classical gas. Mason Williams thing.
Oh yeah,
that style. I really, 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 really liked it. What I think is really cool is you and your wife working together. I see that a lot.
We love that. We love to travel together, and we just have a ball. We have a ball. We're going up to Nashville next week to be on Marty Stewart's TV show, and then we're going to go out to California for some stuff, and we're going to have a good time.
You do a lot of traveling, I can tell.
Yeah, it's been pretty nonstop for the last couple of years.
Yeah. I covered Ronnie Montrose. Him and his wife have that special relationship too. Him and Lisa. She's the touring manager and does all the all the legwork, I guess, and he just performs.
It's a nice arrangement.
Yeah, it is a good arrangement. Yeah,
it's a lot more fun than traveling on a bus full of sweaty guys.
Yeah, exactly. And you keep your relationship good, with your wife,
Yeah, it's important.
How's your son doing, Patrick? He's a filmmaker, right?
Yeah, Patrick is. He's made films. He's not. He was about to make one when that hurricane. What was it? Ivy or Irene.
Irene, right.
Hurricane Irene came up. He was about to make one up in the Catskills, and Irene came in and wiped out the whole area and flooded the place where he was going to shoot.
Right.
So he didn't do it, but yeah, he's still into that. And he was working for Technicolor as an administrator for a while.
Right. It'd be cool if he worked for Disney, huh?
Yeah, I guess. You know,
Yeah.
I don't think he's ever expressed any interest in that, but
Yeah.
right. He loves New York.
Yep. How many children do you have altogether?
I got 2 boys, that's all.
You have 2 boys. What does your other son do?
He's kind of unemployed, lives in Arizona.
He's in Arizona? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Being from the Tampa Bay area, you know, I enjoy sea songs.
Yeah, well, that's great.
And you have 23 songs of the sea, which I thought it was really, really cool. Tell me a little bit about that album.
Well, I've been doing sea songs on my folk den for the last 16 years, and if I were to pick a segment of traditional music that I like the best, I think it would be the old songs of the sea. I just love the kind of bravado and camaraderie, and you know, I mean, they were just amazing guys out there. It was like a frontier. They're like Spaceman.
Yep.
And so I decided to do a compilation of some of my favorites from the folk den and put it out. We were going to call it 23 Songs of the Sea, but then we just kind of abbreviated it down to CCD.
Yeah, I was wondering about the CCD, you know, because it threw me off a little bit. I was saying, wait, it's a CD, but it's CCD, you know? Is this a different format, you know?
No, yeah, it could be like charge couple capacitor display or whatever, yeah. We looked up on Google what all the possible permutations of CCD were, and there were not really any terrible ones, so we went ahead with it.
I remember you did a tune called Jolly Roger, I guess, from the Cardiff Rose album back in like '92.
Yeah.
That was a great tune, man. I really enjoyed that. You know.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Jacques Levy and I wrote that back in the '70s to kind of get the feel of the Rolling Thunder Review.
Right. And you did a quote, you know, about the Byrds once. You said, "We were a ship of pirates. It was every man for himself." So I'm thinking, there must be some kind of connection with you in the sea and all that, right? Do you hang out at the water, or you get on?
I've been sailing a lot. We just did 14 days on the Queen Mary 2 last week.
Aha. Okay, that makes sense.
Sailed around the Caribbean.
Wow.
And I had a ball.
Yeah. So you have some kind of connection there with the sea, then. You really
I love
do.
being on the sea. I love the rolling of the ship, and to me, it's not really happening unless you get a little wave action going, and you're kind of rolling out there. I love that feeling.
It doesn't bother you. You always have your sea legs in, I guess, huh?
Yeah. I think because we travel so much, we don't have any motion sickness problems.
Right. Yeah, you're used to it, I guess.
Yeah.
Huh. I tell you, you know, we could use some of your tunes at the Gasparilla Festival this year.
Oh yeah, that's always fun.
Yeah, have you attended that?
No, I haven't. I've never been to it, but I've seen it on TV, and it looks like a good time.
Yeah, that's coming up this month, as a matter of fact.
Okay, well, we're going to be in California.
Oh, really? Yep.
Right. We leave next week, so.
Next week? You're always somewhere.
Yeah, we like to get around.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I know one of your pet projects is the folk den, and I guess this all came about to raise awareness about folk music and kind of educate people, today. Is that so, pretty much?
Yeah, that's the idea. Back in '95, I noticed I was not hearing as many traditional songs as I had in the past, because the trend was for singer-songwriters to write their own material. So I started putting them up on the internet for free download with the chords and the lyrics and a little story about the song. And the pardon me, University of North Carolina picked it up, and they've been using it as a public service for all these years. So it's really kind of a labor of love.
Yeah, I mean, folk music was such, a big part of growing up. I remember in grade school, you know what I mean? We used to sing the old tunes, the old traditional songs in class and things like that.
And then, but then then Joni Mitchell and Bob Dylan came along and kind of started writing their own songs. So it stopped being cool to do the traditional songs, and it started being cooler to do your own.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was the problem. Everybody started doing their own.
Yeah, because I grew up with, like Burl Ives. I always thought Burl Ives was so cool,
Yeah, I remember listening to him when I was a kid, too.
Yeah, and then, of course, the Smothers Brothers came, and they kind of helped you, reintroduce you to, they had some traditional, I guess, folk stuff as well.
Right, because they always put satire into it.
Yeah.
It was really a great act. I remember seeing them first in, probably the early 60s, like 61, at the Purple Onion in San Francisco. And they were just hilarious. They still do the same thing that they were doing back then.
Yeah, one of them was living here in Sarasota for a long time. I think it was Dickie.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, and
cool.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if he's still here or not. I know he had some, issues with his. He had a couple of houses here and things like that, and with all the way the economy was and everything.
Oh, yeah, that's a problem sometimes.
Yeah.
So. I know Tommy pretty well. I used to hang out with him in L.A., but I didn't get to know Dickie real well.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if he's still here yet or not. We got a lot of celebs here. We got Rick Derringer lives pretty much down the street from me. And Brian Johnson from AC/DC, and he's over here. And we got Jerry Springer. That's our claim to fame.
Oh yeah, well, it's a beautiful area. It attracts people from all over the world. So yeah.
And we got the #1 beach, voted beach in the United States now, Siesta Key.
Wow, cool! Well, congratulations.
Yeah, #1. It's pretty cool.
That's great.
You know what music is missing? I mean, I'm very critical of music. Being a DJ, and I consider myself kind of an aficionado. Growing up, went to a million rock concerts, did all that, lived and breathed it. One thing it's missing are the storytellers.
Yeah.
I
do that.
Yes, you do, and you're probably one of the last Mohicans. You know what I mean? But
well, I picked it up from Pete Seeger back in the 50s. I used to love what he did with his concerts, and so it was an inspiration to me when I watched Pete work.
Pete is an enigma.
Yeah, he's 92.
I can't believe it, man.
Strong.
He's walking history,
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Well,
and I've had the privilege of working with him several times, and it's really wonderful.
Yeah, you did that. Let's see, was it Treasures from the Folk Den?
Right, in 2002, and we did some other stuff. I played at his birthday party at Madison Square Garden 2 years ago.
Oh wow, how was that? That must have been great.
Yeah, it was wonderful. I played Turn, Turn, Turn. You can probably find it on YouTube. So somebody put it up there.
I'll have to look for that now.
A couple of guys from Band of Horses backed me up on it.
Oh, Band of Horses is a great band.
Yeah, they're cool.
They're really, really, really good band. But some of the storytellers I really miss. One of my favorite performers was Harry Chapin. And
oh yeah, he was wonderful.
Yeah, and of course Jim Croce and John Denver and guys like that. We still have we still have Gordon Lightfoot. But it's far and few between. Nowadays.
All right. Yeah, that's interesting that those three guys are dead. That's weird.
It is strange, isn't it?
I don't think there's any correlation between storytelling and being dead, but
and it's
figure still does it.
Yeah, and they died in weird circumstances. You're
right. I know.
Two plane crashes.
Yeah. Precarious world out there.
It is. You never know. You never know what the future is going to hold. The other thing about folk, of course the Brits brought it in with their electric version, and bands like I used to like Steel Eye Span and Fairport Convention, and even bands like Jethro Tull, kind of did a little bit of folk in there,
Sure, yeah, they all had a little bit of that going, yeah.
Who were some of your favorite guys that I know Pete Seeger was probably
in the folk world.
Yeah, in the folk world.
Well, I loved Pete. I loved like Josh White and Big Bill Brunsey and Odetta and Leadbelly.
Yep.
And let's see, the Weavers were great with Pete, but he went solo after that. And then, of course, the kids that came up, the college generation, like the Kingston Trio and Peter, Paul, and Mary came up, and Bob Gibson, Bob Camp, They did one of my favorite albums is Bob Gibson and Bob Camp at the Gate of Horn. I don't know if you can get it anymore, but it was a really dynamic, almost like the Beatles kind of vocals and everything. You know, it was way before its time. It was like 1960 or so.
Right. You know what we need to do. You know, I'm really worried. You know, the music today has changed dramatically. It's really, you know, the mainstream music today is basically dance music.
Right.
You know,
right.
And I know.
You know, I love those drums though. I love the drum and bass combination that you get in some of the hip hop and rap songs.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to relate to the subject matter because I don't live in the inner city, but for people who do, I'm sure it's very enlightening for them. You know.
Well, you're probably close to downtown Orlando.
Yeah, I could go hang there.
You can relate, man.
Yeah.
But how do we get, you know, young people today, you know, I mean, I'm even worried about the rock and roll genre nowadays, you know. It's
rock and roll is its peak, you know, a long time ago.
I know.
Yeah, but maybe 15 years ago, rock and roll was like subjugated to where jazz was, you know. It's like it's a subgenre now.
Do you think it'll come back?
No, I think it'll always be there,
right?
Like jazz is, you know, but it's not going to come back into full-blown popularity like it was in the 60s. You know, you can't reheat a souffle, you know, to quote Paul McCartney.
Right.
And it was just something that happened, and it'll never be the same. You know, it's like we'll always have the music, but you're not going to get that popularity again because I mean, there's so many elements involved. The majority of people were under 30 at the time. There was a Vietnam War going on, and a lot of social pressure to change things. And there was no internet, so people only communicated via songs and the radio and that sort of thing. And those elements have disappeared.
Yeah, all the traditional ways are gone. You can't listen to your local DJ and then run down to the record store and buy a 45. You know, it's
right. So what we got now is Twitter and Facebook and you know, the Occupy Wall Street instead of the protest songs.
Yeah. You know, my son, you know, I don't think he's ever bought a CD or even paid money for an MP3. You know, he's 23 years old. And
they have to.
Yeah, and it's a shame because I think they kill themselves. Record companies kill themselves.
Well, they didn't get it.
Yeah.
You know, they laughed at it at first, and then they tried to sue everybody, and then they went out of business. I mean, it was a really ludicrous scene. I mean, I remember this guy from the Electronic Frontier Foundation, Cory Doctorow, was talking about, boy, if they'd only grasped the idea that they could have sold these MP3s at a reasonable price, they could have dragged them kicking and screaming to the money tree.
Exactly. Exactly right.
Missed it. The only guy who got it was Steve Jobs. He got it, and now iTunes is the biggest music publisher in the world, you know, purveyor of music in the world.
Yeah, but music sales they just can't be, you know, they can't be that great, even with MP3s, right?
Oh, no, man. You're talking about billions of dollars worth. They're making a lot of money on selling MP3s.
I mean, are they making more now, you think, than they did back in with records and record albums?
Well, it's not as top-down. It's more sort of like sideways distributed, where the artist is getting more and everything. Before like the Sony Music bought the AT&T building, and they had private jets.
Right.
And they got all the money, and the artist got a little bit of the money. You know, well, that's not the way it is anymore. The artist can get more of the money from their music now. So it's a good thing for artists.
So that is a good thing. What about the differences between, you know, the record companies back in the 60s? You know, I've had lots of conversations, you know, Jim McCarty, the Yardbirds, Mark Lindsay. I talked to all these guys how tough it was back in the 60s. You're always under pressure to get another hit out. You know?
Absolutely, yeah. There was a lot of pressure. We had to do 2 albums a year for Columbia, and there was also a threat of being suspended.
Right.
And if you were suspended, that meant you couldn't record for them, and you couldn't record for anybody else. You were still under contract, and they could just basically shut you down.
Wow.
It was a horrible thing. It was a horrible thing for artists.
And you had to constantly be on tour. You know,
It was really hard. It was a lot of hard work, and I'm not sure it was that financially rewarding. I mean, some of the old contracts were pretty low for the artist.
Right. Yeah, they pretty much owned you.
It was called indentured servitude. attitude.
Yeah, I talked to Tommy James, and his story, Me, the Mob, and the Music.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, with the infamous Morris Levy and what happened to him. But
Right.
even with everything that happened, he got basically ripped off with all his royalties. But
Yeah.
he still
Well,
says.
So did Elvis Presley. I mean,
Yeah.
the Colonel Tom was taking 50% until after he died. Priscilla sued and got it back. But
Good for Priscilla.
even Elvis got ripped off.
Yeah, but the only thing he says, if it wasn't for him, he probably would have never been a star either, because the good thing about what they did promote you well, right, back then.
Well, that was the one thing, you're
Yeah.
right, that's the one thing record companies were good for.
Right.
They could get you on all the talk shows, they could really boost your image out there, and they would pay for it. They'd pay it in different ways, and you
Right.
get a hit record. So that was a good machine for that.
Right.
That's about the only thing I can say good about it.
I can kind of relate because I'm a self-published author, and
Yeah.
I got to do everything myself. I'm pretty much my own
Isn't it fun?
entrepreneur.
Isn't it much more fun than when Camilla and I are working on
Right.
a new CD, we get to do the cover art and do the mixing and mastering, and we do hands-on in every detail of it.
Yep.
I go, wow, these guys were having all the fun. They were
Yeah.
having all the fun.
Yeah.
And we just had to put in do vocals and lay down band tracks, and then we're out of there, and maybe approve the artwork after they had their fun making it. But now we get to do everything. We love it.
And that's true, and I do. There is a lot of things that I do enjoy. The only thing I need is a little bit more, of the promoting part of it, so I can go write some more books.
Right. Well, Book Baby, there are all these, like CD Baby, you know
Right.
about that?
Yes. Yep.
Huh? Yeah, you do. So, there are a lot of promotional websites out there that you can use.
Right. Yep. The Beatles were, what I understand, huge Byrds fans, and
Yeah, they proclaimed the Byrds to be their favorite band when they came over to America. That was really a blast.
that's pretty neat. Usually it's the other way around,
Yeah, no. Well, they were our favorite band, so I guess they could see see what inspired us in the music we were doing.
It's so cool because you guys really came out in the early '60s, right when the Beatles were kind of, really, I guess, spreading their wings,
Yeah, they were number one in the world at that point. Yeah, when we came out, and it was before Dylan went electric.
Yep. Yeah, that was big controversy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Did you have a chance to hang out with? I think you were good friends with George, right?
Yeah, I knew George and John a little bit, and
Right.
I hung out with Paul just a little bit, but George and I were more friends than anybody. Yeah. I would see George over at Tom Petty's house in the later years, like in the 80s and 90s. And
Right.
so on.
Yeah, the Wilburys. That was such a cool band back then.
Yeah, I love them. In fact, I was just listening to Pandora Radio today, and the Wilburys came on. I went, oh, that was so neat. I love that music.
And your friend Tom Petty's on tour.
Yeah, he's always on. I'm not always, but he's on tour now. Yeah.
Yeah, he's gonna be. There's gonna be a stop in Orlando. Are you gonna stop in and sing?
We're going to be out of town, unfortunately.
Oh, are you? I was hoping you'd stop in and sing "King of the Hill" with him.
Yeah, that would be fun. Well, I have done that in the past, and whenever it's handy, we do it. But we're always pretty busy.
Yeah, I know. That's the. I talk to a lot of artists, and I say, hey, you would be a great fit with this guy. Do you know this guy? Do you know this guy? He says, no, our schedules don't, mesh well, and I really don't know what he's up to. It's.
Yeah, I mean, I love sitting in with Dylan too. I've done that quite a few times when I've been in the same town at the same time, and I'd go over, and they'd invite me up on stage, and that, it's always a thrill to play with these guys.
Yeah. Do you experiment? Have you experimented with different instruments, like from different cultures? My mom and dad, I have an eclectic family. My mom's born and raised in Cuba, and she's been in this country for years. So I grew up, me listening to rock and roll. She's got Celia Cruz blasting, and then I got my dad, whose family is from Syria. So then I had some of the Syrian culture, and that, the different kinds of instruments. I guess they had a guitar called, was it an oud?
Yeah, oud. like a three-string triangular instrument, right?
Yeah. Have you experimented with lots of different cultures and instruments and things?
I've really never owned any of those exotic instruments. I've seen them go by, and I've tried them out. But I have a mandolin, 5-string banjo, and a lot of 12-string guitars, and the 7-string guitar that I came up with for Martin. But I've never had any exotic instruments like the sitar or the let's see, what else? Not the oud or the bouzouki.
Right.
No, I've never had any of those. I've seen them go by. I've tried them, but I never really developed any skill on them.
Now the 7-string is kind of didn't like Russian culture? Didn't they play a 7-string as well?
Well, I don't know. I came up with it because I wanted to get the best of a 12-string on a 6-string.
Right.
And so I doubled up on the octave on the G string, and otherwise it's still a 6-string. And then I can play lead notes up and down the G string pair. Mm-hmm. And that's a trick I learned from George Harrison.
Oh wow. Yeah, I love 12-string. Everything sounds good on a 12-string.
You don't need a 12-string. You don't need a 12-string for everything you do. So like the best part of a 12-string is a G-string pair for doing leads.
Right.
And then the rest of it, I really love the 7-string. I play it quite a bit.
Dave Mason told me that George Harrison gave him one of his first sitars. I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, I guess
it's very cool.
Yeah, I guess he was pretty close with George, and he was actually in the studio for Sgt. Pepper's. He hung out. Yeah,
that would have been a thrill, huh?
Yeah, I'm surprised you weren't there. I guess you were too busy touring.
I think so. Yeah.
Roger, you have a pretty laid-back demeanor, man. It seems like you always have been, and it seems like you have a really positive outlook on life. What do you attribute that to?
Oh, well, we read the Bible,
right?
And, so we're into that.
Yep.
It's a good kind of handbook for living.
Yeah, we need a guide, definitely.
Yeah.
And I'm finding a lot more, which is very interesting. In the early days, rock and roll didn't want to, come out and say that, they were Christian, they had any roots to God or anything like that. They were almost, the opposite, And nowadays, I guess maybe because a lot of rock stars are getting older, they're just coming out and saying, I do believe.
Well, I've always been, looking for God. Back in the 60s, that's why I changed my name from Jim to Roger.
Right.
But I was raised a Roman Catholic, and I used to have to go to the 8 o'clock Mass every morning and have communion, and wear a tie.
Every morning?
Kind of like a restrictive lifestyle. And then in the 60s, we got wild and, let it go, and started looking in other places to see where God really was, and I came back to the Christian thing, so.
I think that's wonderful, and there's so many artists that Rick Derringer, Mark Farner from Grand Funk, and all you guys, all the ones that have kind of embraced God are in great shape. They take care of themselves, great positive outlook on life, and you look like you're going to live to 100 years old,
My mother's 101.
Really?
And, she smoked until she was 70.
You're kidding me.
And she drank pretty heavily until she was in her 80s. So I think it's just good genes on that side of the family.
That's amazing. I think it is all genetic, I really do.
Yeah. I mean, smoking didn't kill her at 70. That's amazing.
That is amazing. I think that's probably the worst thing you can do to your body is smoking.
Yeah, it's bad for your lungs and your heart, and it gives you Alzheimer and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Pretty bad.
Yeah, and there's so many guys I talk to on the phone. I can tell they're smoking heavily. Even Kim Simmons yesterday from Savoy Brown, and Todd Rundgren and Tommy James was like one after another, and of course their voices are real deep. Kind of like Lucille Ball's voice changed, after a while.
Oh yeah. I think that was hormones in her part. But I remember I used to smoke Gauloise back in the until around. I quit in 1970. So I started probably in the 50s. I smoked about 14, 15 years.
Right.
And the reason I quit was Gauloise are an unfiltered French cigarette.
Right.
Very, very, very strong. And I would wake up with my chest just aching in the morning. I couldn't breathe. I'd take a deep breath and it would hurt. So I said, okay, that's enough of this, and I quit.
Yeah.
That was 1970. That's a long time ago.
Well, it's a good thing you did, because your voice probably would have sounded as good as it does today.
Yeah, my voice is holding up pretty well.
Yeah. What do you remember most about the 60s? I mean, if you had one, you know, I grew up in my dad's store in the early 60s, and, you know, I saw all kinds of stuff. I saw all the marches downtown. You know, I saw Nazis marching down F Street. You know what I mean?
Oh,
and I saw, you know, I talked about the 68 riots, you know, and how, you know, I mean, all kinds of stuff. What do you remember the most that just sticks out in your mind about the 60s?
I remember the good times hanging out in Laurel Canyon with, you know, my friends like John Phillips and Michelle and Crosby, and, you know, we'd go to each other's houses and play guitars and sing and make up songs. So I just really have positive memories of it. I mean, yeah, we had bad things going on, but I wasn't really focusing on them.
Yeah.
I remember one night, though, I tried to get down to the Strip, and there were flares across all the access roads to Sunset.
Right.
And it was like, I didn't know it, but it was a riot going on. I just went back to my house in the canyon and found out about it the next day.
Wow. The only year that really scared the hell out of me was 68. I mean, everything, you know, I mean, the assassinations, the riots, and everything else.
Yeah, that was awful. I remember we campaigned for Bobby Kennedy at some venue in downtown L.A. It's like some sports arena.
Right.
And I think it was right before he got shot. We did the Byrds did a show for him, you know, a set. And I met him and told him I wished him the best and everything, and then that was pretty bad because I was a big fan of JFK.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it was such just such a cool time back then. You know, everything was, you know, the lifestyle, people. You know, it was just, you know.
Well, there was a lot of youth and freedom going on. There was a lot of positive energy going on, a lot of good music, artistic renaissance in other areas like painting and sculpture and so on. And we don't have that exactly going on today. Although, you know, there's so much out there, it's hard to find it all. It's like if you go on YouTube, you can find some really cool things that you didn't know were happening. But it's like somebody compared it to having like a forest and everybody put up a little poster on a tree. You're never going to see all the posters.
You work with Bobby Darin. That must have been pretty cool. You know, Bobby Darin, they almost said was going to be the next Frank Sinatra at one time.
Yeah, I was with Bobby when he was doing that Frank Sinatra style. Yeah. And then he got interested in folk music, and that's when he hired me to back him up on the guitar, 12-string guitar, and sing harmony. Mm-hmm. And he was a good teacher. He was a mentor. You know, he taught me a lot about the business. It was really good, and it got me in the Brill Building to teach me how to write songs, and it was great. A great time.
Yeah. Well, I got to bring this up. You know, Buffalo Springfield announced, I think it was about a year ago now, when they said they were going to get together, and they did a few gigs already, and they're still supposed to go on tour. I don't know what's held them up, but they were supposed to go on tour last year, and I think they're supposed to go on tour again this year. So we're still waiting to see what happens there. But I think David Crosby said that he'd love to see a double bill with the Byrds, but you probably wouldn't agree to it.
That's true. I'm just too busy, too happy doing what I'm doing to want to do that. And I'll go back to the reheat the souffle quote from Paul McCartney. You know, it's like they asked him to get the Beatles back together when John and George were still around, and he said it's like trying to reheat a souffle. It wouldn't be the same. Yeah,
I agree with you. I agree with you on that.
Yeah. But I'm just having a ball now. I mean, I can't imagine. To me, being in the big time is not that big a deal. You know, it's like I've been there. I know what it is. It's exciting, but it's also a lot of work, a lot of pressure, and I love sort of flying under the radar where we are, where we can play theaters and sell CDs on the internet, and it's really kind of a cool time.
But it sounds like you're having a lot of fun. It really does.
Yeah, I am. Yeah. Loving it.
Do you still talk with David Crosby every once in a while, or not really?
I wish him happy birthday every August 14th. He thanks me. So it's not like we're not talking. talking, but he does want to get the Byrds back together, and he's even been quoted saying he offered me $1 million to do it. I turned him down. Melissa, did he really offer you $1 million? I said, no.
Well, hopefully he's not going to try to do it without you, because that happens a lot nowadays. You know, there
was this guy, Andrew Gold. I don't know if you ever heard
yeah,
of him.
sure. Yeah.
He had all my Rickenbacker parts and all my vocal parts down for the Byrds, but he passed away last year or something.
Yeah.
I told David, he said, why don't you just get Andrew Gold, man? He can do all my parts.
That's funny.
It'd be great.
Would you be upset if he did that? If they?
I suggested it to him.
Oh, okay.
He wants to do the Byrds, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, well, okay, man, take it out and do it. I don't care.
That's funny. I was a little upset, you know, when I talked to John Anderson from Yes. You know, they replaced him with a tribute band guy.
Oh yeah.
I just can't get into that.
No, I understand that. We didn't like it when Michael Clarke and Gene Clarke were going around being the Byrds either. You know, it's
right.
Like, it wasn't the real Byrds. So.
But
I understand that.
McGuinn, Clarke, and Hillman was a great band. That was a good band.
That was fun.
Yeah.
We had fun for the first year or so.
Yeah, you guys were rocking for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I talk about David Crosby with a friend of mine. You probably know him. You know Joe Lala?
Yeah, I know Joe. Yeah.
You know Joe? He's still in Tampa.
Yeah, I saw him. Let's see, I played a gig over there a couple of years ago, and Joe was a friend of the promoters. So I think we were at this store in what do they call it? Ybor City.
Ybor City, yeah, yeah.
And we're getting these Cuban sandwiches.
That's
and
Tampa.
Joe came in to get one, I guess. You know, I don't know if he was invited or if he just popped in. But
Yep.
Anyway, we got to hang out for a while.
They consider him like the mayor of Ybor, or you know, because he does a lot of voiceover, and he's like the voice of Ybor City. You know.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. I remember working with him with McGuinn, Clarke, and Hillman. We had a great time.
He's got a lot of great stories, you know, and of course he's played with Manassas and did a lot of stuff with Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Young and everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. He's a wonderful musician.
He's doing good. He takes care of his mama. You know, his mom is like in her 90s right now as well.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
That's nice.
He's a good guy. You know, to look and talk to Joe, you swear he's a Cuban. You know, but he's of course he's a Sicilian. You know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he kind of throws me off.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of wrapping down here. I don't want to, hold you up too much or anything. Do you have one good story for me back in in your rock and roll days, like when you were on the road or anything? Something funny, maybe? Anything? I always ask everybody I interview that.
Let's see, a funny story. Well, this is kind of funny. We were touring in a motorhome in Rome, Georgia, and for some reason, a doctor driving a Cadillac took offense at us, and he drove his car into the front of our motorhome, and we all, kind of stopped. And the cops came, and the guy who showed up was Officer Pope, and we're in Rome, Georgia. And Officer Pope takes a look at the doctor says, these guys ran into me. And Officer Pope takes a look at the car and the motorhome and the situation, and he says, it looks to me like you ran into them, doctor. And he just let us all go.
That's fine. What year was that?
That was probably 65.
About 65? Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet you got some really good...
And anybody with long hair in the South was considered something suspicious,
my first radio job, they had me, I could have taken was in Mississippi, and it was, it was late 70s, but, I was still a rocker and, my hair was a little long and everything. I was still thinking about the Klan,
Yeah, they were going strong.
So I didn't take it.
Probably still are in some areas, but when we played the Grand Ole Opry, we got a real cool reception there. It wasn't friendly.
It wasn't friendly, really?
No, we got booed. It was like we were invading hippies, and
right.
They didn't like it.
Yeah, they've got... I got a good story for you. I'm kind of developed to become a good friend with an artist. Her name is Janet Robbins.
I'm not familiar with her.
And her dad was Marty Robbins.
Oh, okay.
And
I know who he was, yeah.
Yeah, and growing up in that household and everything, she went totally the opposite. She hated country music, hated Nashville, and went... and listen to Pink Floyd, Jethro Tull, and progressive rock and that kind of stuff. And now she's kind of a progressive ambient artist, and she's, you know, super talented. She's like my age, you know. But yeah, but she went.
I'll look her up on YouTube.
Yep, Janet Robbins. Yep.
Okay.
If you want, I can send you a link. I'll send you a link. I guess to your wife. You know, because I have her email address.
Well, I can just find her on YouTube. That's no problem. I was going to tell you, Marty Stewart. I bumped into him about 10 years ago.
Right.
We were doing this. It was like a big movie, like in what do we call that panoramic movie? IMAX.
IMAX, yeah.
Yeah, IMAX. It was Dolly Parton was in it, and Marty Stewart was kind of the master of ceremonies.
Right.
And Marty and I sat down by a little creek, and he pulls out this V-bender guitar and starts playing all of Clarence White's licks. And I went, wow, you know, I haven't heard those for 30 years. This is great. This is great. So Marty and I started playing together, and kept in touch, and he invited me back to the Opry last year, about a year ago.
Right.
So 43 years after they kind of kicked us out of the Grand Ole Opry, I got to play it again with Marty.
Oh, wow. I bet your reception was a little bit different this time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very good, very good. A lot of flash bulbs going off.
You know, there's a lot of rock and roll guys now that they're headquartered in Nashville, because I guess all the good players are down there now. You know?
Nashville's kind of like the new LA scene, you know, like the LA scene from the 70s or whatever has moved to Nashville.
Yeah, that's interesting. Huh.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who live there.
As a matter of Peter Frampton's based out of Nashville. He lives in Cincinnati, but he's, you know, all the music and everything is based out of Nashville, which is
it's a good spot. You know, it's like it's gotten more progressive, and it's got great studios and good players, and it's a good place to work out of.
Right. I got to mention, you've really, you know, with all the changes in music and everything, you've really embraced technology, haven't you?
Oh, I've always loved technology.
Yeah.
It's been like a parallel in my life. In fact, before I got hired by the Limelighters, when I was 17, I was thinking of going to broadcasting school because I was so much into technology. My dad used to produce commercials at WABC in Chicago.
Right. Yep.
And I would go down there and watch the director go, you know, ready on one, take one, ready on two, like a roll film and so on.
Sure.
Wow, this is exciting stuff. I want to get into that. So I've always really loved technology. It's always been part of my life, and you know, you probably saw me with a briefcase telephone back in the 70s. And, I don't know if you saw that. It was like an early, it was like a two-way radio telephone in a briefcase.
That's way ahead of their time back then, you know?
Yeah, it's about 72. I had one of those. I used to use it on airplanes, and it had a 25-watt transmitter. And I'd ask the flight attendant, the stewardess back then, if I could use it, and she'd go ask the captain, and he'd say, yeah, okay. And I'd call, like I'd wait for a city to start showing up in the horizon, and then I'd call the mobile operator and tell her the number I wanted, and she'd connect me. And you had about like 7-minute window at going at 600 miles an hour over that city, and then you'd fade out. It was really cool. But can you imagine 25 watts in an airplane?
Wow.
I mean, that's a lot of power, though. Like 50 times what a cell phone puts out.
Yeah.
But they would let me do it, and it didn't do any harm.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to have the old bag phone, and when we were selling electronics, we were specialties in dual voltage, you know, because we had a lot of international travelers, so we had 220 and 240 volts, you know, the 50, 60 cycles. We carried TVs that were like different, you know, PAL, CCOM, and you know, because we have the NTSC system, I guess. But we sold these phones. I mean, this was like cutting edge. It was like a cellular cordless phone that would travel 30 miles. You can do 30 miles.
I remember them. They looked kind of like. Well, I know what you know. It's like a telephone handset in a bag with like batteries and a transmitter. Yeah, and a little antenna stuck out.
Big. And then you can get an additional antenna and put it on your roof if you wanted to. You know, for more distance.
Well, my briefcase phone had like a jack in the back for a car antenna too, and like a power plug for the 12 volts, and it was pretty sophisticated. I still have that thing.
Do you?
But they took off the frequencies now. They don't use it. They use it for paging or something now. But it was back in the 152 megahertz area.
Yep. Well, these things that we sold, they were only 240 or 220 voltage, and we could never test them out. and we we sold them to the Kuwaiti Air Force, and they kept coming back for more, so we assumed they were working, you know.
I guess they did, yeah. 30-mile range. That's pretty good. Yeah.
And you know, we got each unit cost like between $1,400 to $1,700 back then, you know.
Yeah, I think I paid $3,000 for my briefcase phone.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw one of your first laptops too on the internet somewhere.
Oh, okay. Was it an IBM?
I think so. I think it was the IBM. Yeah.
Yeah, IBM Convertible was the first laptop I had.
What year was that?
Probably around like 80-something. Let's see, 86. I'm thinking 86.
Yep. Yeah, because I remember one of the first computers you remember the Commodore 64?
Yeah, I remember the Commodore, right.
Yeah, and gosh, there was a lot of them back then. Timex made a little computer.
Oh yeah, the little Timex. Yeah.
You remember that?
Remember that?
Yeah, man, you're really up on all that stuff, aren't you?
No, I followed it. I used to get Popular Science, Popular Mechanics, and Popular Electronics, and read all of those things coming out.
You would have been great working with us.
Pardon me?
You would have been great working with us at the store.
Oh yeah, I would have loved it at the store. I would have loved to hang out there, right? I used to hang out at stores like that.
Yeah, the greatest thing I ever heard was when the Walkman came out, the Sony Soundabout, when that first came out.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Well, back let's see, in McGuinn, Clarke, and Hillman, 77, 78. I got my first Walkman, and I remember listening to the tracks we were recording in the studio and putting them in the Walkman and going out with roller skates, and I couldn't believe the sound. It was incredible. It was like they were in a room, you know. I couldn't believe it. I never heard anything like it.
And then the CD player came, and then they lied to us. You know, they told me that, these things don't scratch.
Yeah, and they told us that they last forever, and they don't do that either.
They really told me that too. You know, all the wholesalers told me that. And so.
And it doesn't really sound better than vinyl, but except for the clicks and pops. But
yeah.
And then the MP3s don't sound anywhere near as good as anything we had.
Right. But you know what? I really miss that old sound. You know, like all the old Byrds stuff, Simon and Garfunkel. You know, the Beatles stuff. You know, it's hard to capture that sound. It was nice and crisp. You know, a crisp sound. You know, and you had that I guess that echo chamber.
A little echo chamber, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't a plug-in. It was like it was like a cave or some sort of like it was an area in the building that they put a microphone on one end and a speaker on the other.
Yeah, it was, the sound was, I mean, even, you know, the Dark Side of the Moon album from Pink Floyd, they jerry-rigged a lot of stuff in the studio, and look how great it sounds, you know?
Yeah, the old days were good. I remember when they switched from tubes to transistors, and I could hear a difference on that.
Yeah.
It wasn't as warm anymore.
Exactly. I got a jukebox in my condo here, and I got a few Byrds 45s on there, and I'm telling you, man, you know, I'd rather have that any day than an MP3 sound.
MP3 is like a fluorescent light, you know. It's not on all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Roger,
I gotta go. So,
okay.
Great talking to you.
Thank you for joining, and please subscribe to Ray's YouTube channel.